Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Oilers Live Podcast. I'm Michael. I am the host, and we're entering the 2019-2020 Oilers hockey season after another continued drought of missing the playoffs. I've got as my guest, though, today, somebody new, somebody I've not had on before. It's Ryan, and you can find him on Twitter at EDM Oil Drops. That's on Twitter at EDM Oil Drops, and also at his website and blog, www.edmoildrops.com. Is that right, Ryan?
It's actually edmontonoildrops.ca.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad that I confirmed that. And so, Ryan, this is your first time on the podcast, and if it goes well, hopefully it's not your last time. Let's get to know a little bit about you. How long have you been doing the Edmonton Oil Drops for?
Well, I started up the blog at the end of the 2017-18 season, so a little over a season now.
Okay. And from Edmonton?
Yeah, I've always been in the Edmonton area. I'm actually out in Sherwood Park.
Okay. Well, we won't hold that against you. You would find me in YYC with the other oil fans up here in Calgary. So, you know, as much as I'd love to be down there, or up there rather, I'm stuck here for now.
Yeah, you got to represent Edmonton in that place.
That's right. That's absolutely right. What encouraged you to start up a blog? I mean, we all know there's tons of writers out there, tons of people, doing different blogs and such. What encouraged you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've always been a little bit of a writer, at least since university anyway. Like I've done like poetry and short stories and other argumentative pieces. But obviously I'm a passionate Oilers fan, and I wanted to kind of combine my passion for the Oilers with my passion for writing, and it's just a little side project for me. It's actually been a lot of fun, and it's turned out to be way more successful than I ever thought it could possibly be. So that's been fun.
That's awesome. And have you considered, I know there's a ton of different sports sites out there. Have you considered publishing on any of those?
Definitely given it thought. I haven't actually pulled the trigger just yet because I am having fun on my own with no restrictions or commitments. But it's something I'm open to. Yeah,
awesome. Well, I know I'm sure as anybody, I've read a few of your posts, and they're well written and well thought out. As I do with everybody, I want to thank you for your contribution to, the rest of us fans that. We want different opinions, different analysis, and yours is just another voice in that, and we're happy to have you. So thanks for joining us. Other question, I guess, that I have, and one that I've asked a lot of old guests is, why are you an Oilers fan? Do you remember like when you became an Oilers fan, or was it organic because you grew up in the Edmonton area?
I'm going to get into a little bit of trouble for this one, but I haven't always been an Oilers fan, I have to admit. As a kid, I started out as a Ducks fan because, Disney and the logo.
Yeah.
But then I moved over to the Avs in 96 when they moved over from Quebec, and then I kind of fell in love with Waugh and Forsberg and Sakic, and I know, put your torches down, everybody. But yeah, I actually became a fan. It was in around the time the Oilers were starting to draft more younger, skilled guys like Aberle, Gagne, or in around that time. Just when it started to get bad is when I started to come on board.
All right. Well, I think that's when the pitchforks come out. So it sounds like we can blame you, Ryan, for the drought.
Yeah, exactly. You can throw me under the bus. It's fine.
Yeah. And what's your first... do you remember your first game? Have you? I assume you've been to watch the Oilers live. Do you remember what your first game was?
Yeah, it was actually Oilers and Ducks. My dad took me to a game when I can't remember how old I was now, but I was cheering for the visiting team in that one. But Oilers Ducks in the mid '90s sometimes.
Oh, right on. Right on. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I did start out a Habs fan, and before I ever became an Oilers fan. In fact, I was one of those contrary children that cheered against the Oilers every chance I had.
That was me too.
Yeah, and I regret that because I suspect I'm older than you, but I missed out on a lot of the glory years of the Oilers. But I did appreciate what we had here, and it was fantastic. Of course, now we're living through a whole different time, which brings us to where we are today, and the purpose of today's podcast, the Oilers season preview. So, I want to start by kind of getting your thoughts now that we go into this new season. Lots of, I would say there are a number of changes, not all on the ice, but lots off the ice. Your initial thought of the changes that the Oilers have made so far from last season. Do you think the Oilers have done enough? And what are your thoughts on all the changes so far?
Well, I guess the first thing I'll touch on there would be the hiring of Ken Holland. As much as everyone was kind of hoping for the younger, sexier GMs, like maybe a Kelly McCrimmon or someone of that ilk, I do think that Ken Holland was definitely the best man available for the job. I think his track record in Detroit speaks for itself. Although, you can make the argument that in recent years, the Red Wings haven't been quite where the old standard was for them. But that happens over time. Pro sports is cyclical, and I think the Red Wings had to come down at some point. And I think it was just a time for Holland to move out of Detroit, and we're lucky to have him here. As far as what they did behind the bench with Dave Tippett, the same kind of thing. There's the best available option. He's got the most experience, and he's got a track record for turning teams around. Like in Dallas, their first season, they missed the playoffs the year before. Tippett comes in and they make the playoffs all of a sudden. Same thing in Arizona. So we're hoping for the same thing here. Okay,
and I guess the big question is, do you feel like the Oilers have done enough?
If I'm being totally honest, I don't think they've done quite enough. And I guess it depends on what your definition of enough is, right? But for me, it's, are they going to make the playoffs? Have they done enough to be a contender? And for that, I say not yet, but it's going to take Holland some time.
Okay.
Right. But for this immediate season, no, not enough.
Okay. Well, you didn't ask my opinion, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Fine then, be that
way. And as the host, I guess that's my prerogative. You know what? I agree with you on a lot of points, and I think the Oilers fans, as we quite often say, are a passionate bunch, and everybody's got their own opinions. A lot of people did want that younger, sexier GM. We got Ken Holland instead. I think that's fine. They have done something that they haven't done in a very long time, and that's not rush the process. Now, have they done enough to make the playoffs? Probably not. I mean, we'll talk about that today during this season preview. But have they done enough to at least take a step forward for the first time in 14, 15 years? And I would say they did what they could. And, as Ken Holland comes in and did the unimaginable, which was get, rid of the Lucic contract. I don't think we got rid of the player, because I don't think the player was as much a problem as everybody thought. I think the contract was a huge problem. And so Holland did that. And then he brings in Tippett. I think, if we... if we're moving forward, we needed a coach. I know that we've gone through, a coach a month or so it feels sometimes, but Tippett's, you're right. He has a track record of taking losing teams and turning them around and moving them forward. And I think he he's wrongly got the moniker of being a defensive coach. I think if you listen and you read some of the comments from the players that have played with him in the past, he's a responsible coach. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a defensive coach. I think you're going to find, as we know, and we talked about prior to the start of the show, he's talking about having younger, faster up front in that top six forwards, and then looking at the bottom six as being those defensive 200-foot player kind of players, right? And I think he's done some of that. What about the pickups that the Oilers have done during the offseason? Guys like Yurcho, Haas, Nygaard, who who we're going to talk about today. Not moving Cave, keeping Cave, picking up Smith and Neal. What's your thoughts on the lineup changes for the Oilers this year?
And you touched on doing the impossible with the Lucic deal there. Like, I was pumped when I found out that it was Neal that we got in exchange for Lucic. Like, I was kind of thinking it would be Eriksson out of Vancouver, because it was the lesser of the two players that were being rumored. But no, James Neal still has some pop in his game, so I still think he can get 20 goals. So to get Neal for Milan Lucic, who just couldn't find his way in the last year and a half, I think that's exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Neal was he just didn't fit on that Calgary team. And when I look at how that team's put together, it makes perfect sense. You can't have a guy like Neal sitting in the bottom six. I just don't think that that's his, where his skill set is best.
Definitely not.
And I, while I don't think he's as prolific a goal scorer as like a Phil Kessel, I think, Kessel is a similar type of player. Why would you put him in your bottom six? Right. And, he's a goal scorer. He's not known for his lightning fast speed. And Neal's not known for his lightning fast speed. Leave that up to Connor. He's got one job. It's to get open. Have Connor find him, or Draisaitl find him, or Nuge find him. Whoever's playing center with him, and then and shoot the puck. The one thing, and I remember looking at this last year, is that's what he does best. He even did it in the preseason. He just shoots the puck. I'm not even sure he doesn't close his eyes. He's just getting the puck on the net and trying to shoot it, in the vicinity of the goal and away from the goalie. And sometimes that's all you need. And if you're going to play with, best player in the league, which it looks like they're going to start him there, I suspect that we may see, at least a 20-plus goal season for him. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Like, I think Neal should be with McDavid, honestly. Like, McDavid can find anybody. And if you got a proven goal scorer in Neal at the other end of McDavid's passes, then, yeah, I think Neal should be good for at least 20 if he's with McDavid the entire year. And you're entirely right. Like, Neal's got over 20 goals in 10 of the last 11 years, right? Like, he'll shoot from anywhere, and he's annoying to play against. Like, that's something he doesn't get a lot of credit for. Like, he is hard on the forecheck. He's hard-nosed. He's gritty, and he'll find open spaces. He'll go to the net. So, yeah, all of those things are things that I think you need to succeed with Connor McDavid. James Neal has it. So I hope they do stay as a pair.
Excellent. Yeah, I think, this is not going to be the most exciting podcast because we're not disagreeing on anything yet. At least not in a great big way. You recently did a couple of, I guess your two most recent articles on the website were around training camp surprises that could equal playoffs, and then the training camp wrap which had the expected lineup, which I think when I look at that now, obviously there's been some changes, so you probably change your projected lineup a little bit. What we know today, I guess, is Tippett said Yurcho is out with some type of operation or something being done. What do you think of the of what's looking like the lineup for opening night, which is and I'll say this for those of you that are listening, the lines at practice today were Nygaard, McDavid, and Neal on the top line, Draisaitl, Nuge, and Cassian, Granlund, Haas, and Chason, Kara, Cave, and Archibald, Nurse and Larson as the top D pair, Clefbaum and Bear on the second pair, and then Russell and Benning on the third pair, and then of course Smith and Koskinen in net. Spares being Manning, and then I think the other spares on the were Russell and Yurcho, the extras on the forward lines. What's your thought if that's the opening day lineup?
It's an interesting opening night lineup, and the thing I'll say before I go in too deep is the opening night lineup, everyone gets super excited about it, but it's not going to be the same even 10 games from now, I'm sure. It's going to get changed a lot as the year goes on. But if I look at that top line with Nygaard, McDavid, and Neal, McDavid is probably the only one on that trio that is capable of putting up top line numbers. But if we look at how their skill sets mesh with each other, like I talked about earlier, Neal's a finisher. And Nygaard, he showed me a lot of things in camp that I didn't think he was capable of. Like, he's tenacious on the forecheck. He'll win battles on the boards. He can draw penalties, and he can sneak into open spaces, and he'll shoot from most anywhere. So I actually think that's an interesting line, or an interesting top line.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of that top line?
Yeah. No, I mean, I know, and some people say you can't have Draisaitl and McDavid running the top line. I just love watching those two together. So while I get why we would do it this way and why Tippett might want to try it out, I will miss seeing McDavid and Draisaitl, and I'm sure we'll see them on the power play. And that's an area that you just can't tell from preseason unless if you're attending practices, you don't know what they're doing different and who they plan on doing what with. You just never see the full power play lineup in the preseason.
That is entirely true. Preseason's always weaker competition, and the units are never quite what they're going to be in the regular season. But let's talk about the splitting McDavid and Draisaitl up a little bit, because I've been thinking that they should try the way that they're doing it right now with Draisaitl playing with Nuge for a little while. The reason I say that is because you've got three guys that could play top six center for you in McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nuge. Which of those guys is strongest?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, McDavid obviously is the strongest for center.
Absolutely, and the Draisaitl has never been known as a defensive shutdown guy, whereas Nuge is a little bit better at that. Right, so I think having Nuge and Hopkins in the middle to support Draisaitl's defensive inefficiencies is actually a stronger play on a second line.
So let me ask you, I mean, that second line, because we have not, and I'm trying to remember and recollect watching Draisaitl and Nuge play together. Do you have any? I haven't seen any numbers of the two of them together. Do you recall the last time we saw them? Last year, I don't think we saw them play together.
They got a game or two together last year with Chason, I believe was the third winger on that, or third player on that line. They were honestly dynamic in that one game. It was at home. I can't remember who they were playing against, and I'm not a big advanced stat guy, so I don't have what their Corsi numbers were or anything like that, but I remember them being dangerous the entire time they were together.
Yeah, and, Draisaitl to me, and this is something like, for the guy that scored 50 goals, I am fascinated. Like, I love watching Draisaitl play. He sees parts of the ice that I'm not sure how he sees them. You know, I was at the Calgary Edmonton game, the last preseason game, and while it wasn't his best game, and he seemed a little bit uninterested at times, and that's kind of the way Draisaitl plays a little bit.
Definitely.
You know, sometimes he can have that look that he's not really part of the game, but he makes some passes that are unbelievable, and I just think he's, you know, to me, he is one of the sweeter passers in the league today. Like, in terms of, you know, just getting the right, you know, sauce on it, and knowing where the other players are, and just having a look around. His goal scoring was all about just being ready for McDavid to get him the pass, right? And you know, in utilizing the strengths that McDavid brought. I think Draisaitl, maybe we, I mean, you remember last year that, I hope you remember, that backhand that he did from within the blue line, you know, tape to McDavid.
Against Colorado.
Yeah.
Yep, I was thinking about that pass when you were talking.
Yeah, that's sick, right? And Draisaitl, you know, does that on a regular basis, and I think sometimes you don't really realize just how phenomenal it is until you watch him live, and you see, you know, like, he just knows where players are, and he comes in and makes a play. So, what I'm curious about on this Draisaitl, Nuge, Kassian line is who's feeding who, right? You know,
Right.
and that's, to me, is a little bit of a concern, as we saw in that other game, or in that same Calgary game. Kassian had, you know, didn't quite have the finish that we might want and expect.
Yeah, if I'm looking at a line of Draisaitl, McDavid, and Kassian, which one of these things is not like the other, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But what I'd say to that would be, like, McDavid is definitely known as more of a playmaker than a goal scorer. And Draisaitl's had to adapt his game a little bit, because, like, he was always known as a playmaker before he got into the game as well, right? So, like, for him scoring 50 goals, I would not have called that in his draft year.
Yeah.
I would, like, definitely not, right? And if he's playing with Nuge, I think Nuge is another guy who's known more as a playmaker, but he's a deceptively good shooter as well. It's like, I think Draisaitl and Nuge can both snipe and dish equally as well.
Yeah,
Like, not comparing Draisaitl to Nuge, but they're both, like, those skill sets are about equal in their repertoire, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Draisaitl is, you know, definitely the more talented offensive player. Nuge's all around game is definitely you know, stronger than Draisaitl's. It could be, and I don't, you know, unlike you, I can't recall watching them play together. So I'm excited to see, and I'm open to this lineup, and as you say, right, it's 10 games in, you're likely going to see a different setup, and also it looks like Yurcho is probably going to slot in there for somebody, maybe Nygaard. Yeah, I'm excited to see. The one that you know, I'm curious about, and maybe you're not, and it doesn't seem like a lot of fans are, is keeping Haas in the lineup. What's your thoughts on Haas? And I'll tell you. Well, let me first tell you why. I don't think that we really saw much out of him until the last, say, 4 periods of hockey that he played, and he, you know, he reminds me of, you know, like a Marchand, a guy that's got unbelievable speed, will probably get, you know, 10 breakaways a game, and maybe if we're lucky, he scores on one of them, right? Like, yeah, and to me, you know, unless you've got one hell of a defensive game, then that kind of a player is not that valuable on a team. So I was a little bit surprised, just given that he didn't show up until late in the preseason. Your thoughts on the Oilers keeping Haas and Granlund and Yurcho and Russell, and your thoughts on the lineup, I guess, before we move on.
Yeah, so I actually agree with you on Haas. I really like Haas. Like, I'll admit I didn't get to see that last preseason game where he had his best game. Like, you can probably talk more to that game than I can. But from what I've seen of Haas, he's speedy. He's got a little bit of finish, like certainly more finish than Colby Cave has. And he's been decent in the faceoff dot from what I've been hearing. It's like all of those things are definitely working in his favor. Like I definitely like him over Colby Cave.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Like Colby Cave does a lot of good things for you. He's fairly defensively reliable. He's in good position. He just doesn't have the offense that you need to be a full-time NHLer.
Yeah, no, and I'm not sure that anybody really sort of expected Cave. I'm not sure they expected him to be in the Oilers lineup come game day. But
the reason that I thought that he would be is just because his salary cap hit is $675K.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough. What about Sheehan?
Sheehan's interesting because, like, if you look at his numbers from last year and through most of his career, like he produces like a fourth line center. But like, just so everyone's aware, I kind of use 30 points as my difference between third and fourth line. Like, if you can get 30 points reliably, I think you can handle yourself on a third line. Sheehan's done it twice, I believe, most recently 2 seasons ago. So he can do it. Whether he will do it is another question.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously he's out with injury right now. I think as far as Cave is concerned, that's probably, in his favor. My thought is that when Sheehan gets back, Kara, and Archibald pretty much played the whole preseason together. It seems to me that that's Tippett's way to go. I suspect that unless if you know something that I don't know, when Sheehan gets back, he'll likely be put into that spot.
I think it's reasonable to assume that.
Yeah, and that of course could change by the time we even publish this. Okay, so we've got the opening night lineup down pat. The Oilers announced and put on the website who the roster is set. Gagner down to the bake. Manning cleared waivers. I guess now it's time to chat about kind of where we see the Oilers this year, and as far as the Western Conference goes, and we won't put our predictions in yet, but let's chat a little bit about, do we see them making the playoffs? Maybe some surprise players, expectations, etc. So I want to start with first, when you look at the Western Conference this year and you look at the Oilers, do you think this team has done enough to at least make a play for the playoffs?
I think they'll be in the mix for one of the wild card spots. They're one of I'd say 3 teams that are in the mix for the third spot in the Pacific Division. But if they're going to make it, they're going to scratch and claw their way in. It'll be a dogfight.
Yeah. Okay, let's go team by team in the Western Conference.
Okay.
So maybe we'll start in the Pacific. And we'll start with our friends south of Edmonton in Calgary. Where do you see them finishing in the Pacific this year?
I see them regressing a little bit from last year. Because in the last, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I believe since the 14-15 season, they've kind of been alternating. They'd have a great year where they make the playoffs, and then a really bad year where they're kind of like where we are usually. Right. So amazing year last year. I think they got amazing production out of guys like Elias Lindholm and Matthew Tkachuk. I don't know if they're capable of doing it again. They could be, but they could also regress a little bit.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that Calgary's got going for them is they've got two top lines. I'm not too I wouldn't bet against Tkachuk. In fact I hate Tkachuk more than I hate any other player. But if he was on my team, I would love him more than I loved any other player. And I think that he's that type of a player. He's just going to, continue to be, the asshole that continues to score points and pisses you off. The biggest question I have is that 3M line that they, rave about, and whether or not, you can expect a guy like Frolik to show some consistency and that whole line to be just as powerful as they were going forward. The other thing that I think with Calgary, when I look at them, and this is why I think they're more likely to regress, like you said, is this the big thing? I was a fan favorite of Talbot. I liked Talbot, his family, the way he felt about Edmonton, all of that. But do I think he's a talented goalie that I'd love on my team backing me up? There's no way, right? Like, I'm glad he didn't re-sign in Edmonton.
Yeah.
I think Mike Smith was far and away the best player on the Flames during the playoffs. It wasn't even close. And he's gone, right? Neil is not a big loss for them, obviously. They've put Lucic into the lineup, which to me, right, another thing with this team is you've got Rittich, who's never really proven yet that he's a top goalie. We're just the Flames are expecting that he will move into that role and be, a number one goalie. And you've added in one of the slower guys in the league to give you that bottom six. And I think doesn't matter where you slot Lucic, you better have, you better hope that, that bottom six plays a good 200-foot game. And I just don't think I think Lucic actually lowers their capability on that bottom six. And they're stuck with him. I don't think that there's much you can do with that player, with that contract. And I don't think they're going to get the toughness because I don't think he, that's up for debate, but I don't think he offered that in Edmonton either. So my questions really are around, does Tkachuk, does he stay consistent? I think he will, but does the rest of that line stay consistent? And is this goaltending for real? Right? Because if they end up having to use Talbot, I think they're in a lot of trouble.
For sure. And I don't know how many people on this planet would have looked at watching the Oilers last year and said, I should probably take Lucic and Talbot and put them on my team. Right? But Tree Living is one of those guys.
Yeah, he is. And Tree Living, we love you. Obviously been consulted by Chiarelli at some point. Okay, so that's Calgary. Where do you see them finishing in the Pacific today, or do you want to go through the other teams first and kind of think about it from there?
Let's go through the other teams first. We'll do our predictions at the end.
Okay. Next, we've got San Jose. Thoughts on San Jose?
So San Jose, they're going through a bit of a transition period, but they've done well enough at drafting where they're still going to be a consistent team, even though they've lost Pavelski, right? Like, Pavelski's gone in the last couple of years. Marlowe's gone. Thornton is ancient. He's still with them, but he's not nearly close to the player he once was. But they're still fine with guys like Timo Meier breaking out last year, Thomas Hertl being really solid, Logan Couture being the guy he is, right? Evander Kane. It's like they've still got a lot of depth and a lot of talent, And the other thing about San Jose is their bottom guys. I don't know where they find them all the time, but they find guys like LeBanc and Sorensen that can just put up points and be tenacious on the puck in all zones. It's like their forwards are strong, and I don't know how you can count a team with Burns and Carlson as your top two defensemen out, right? Like,
yeah,
they're going to be a strong team.
Yeah, well, their defense is out of this world, right? And it's going to be again this year. There's no doubt if Carlson stays healthy. His when he came back, I can't remember, but it was sick, right? Like he was over a point a game when he came back for a defenseman. And talking about sweet passes, I will always remember that. 3-4 feet off the ice, sauce pass, tape to tape down the middle when he was playing for the Sens.
To Hoffman, right?
Yeah, to Hoffman, as one of the most unbelievable passes I've ever watched in my life. So he's outstanding. The question around San Jose for everyone, including yourself, I think, is Pavelski, right?
Yeah, how much of a loss is he?
Yeah. Yeah, and he had, I think he had close to 40 goals last year, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look it up to be certain. So losing that kind of goal production, is a big deal. But they've got Kane and Hurdle and Couture and LeBanc and some of these guys that can, I think, pick up the slack. Kane, of course, back in trouble again, gets the 3-game suspension. I thought that going to San Jose changed him. So that's interesting. And then the other question to me around San Jose is, Martin Jones.
Yeah,
right.
That's a big question.
Yeah. So they to me, could be top in the division or they could be bottom in the division, and neither would surprise me.
I don't see them falling to the bottom of the division. Like, the thing that goes against San Jose is their defense is a bunch of risk takers, right? Like, they're going to allow chances every night, right? So Martin Jones, we've seen him when he's at the top of the game, he's one of the best in the league. But he struggled for most of last year, and there was a time where San Jose struggled along with him, right? So it's how do you balance the loss of Pavelski's high 30-something goals and their tendency to give up high-risk chances with how much talent they have as a whole, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think their talent's going to be enough to get them in.
Yeah, I wouldn't count them out. In fact, when we get to the predictions part, I do predict their playoff team.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe one.
Yeah. Next up is the Vegas Golden Knights, who they themselves as a team went through a bit of a sophomore slump last year, but still made the playoffs by 3 points in hand. Thoughts on Vegas?
Vegas, yeah, they're unreal. A little bit of a sophomore slump last year, but they're the one team in the Pacific Division I think we can automatically push into the playoffs. Like, you've got an exceptional top line where you've got Stone, Stastny, and Pacioretty, right? And that wasn't even their top line when they went to the Cup Finals 2 years ago. They had the line with Carlson and Marchessault, right? So, and Riley Smith. So you got a wicked top six there. And the bottom six, like Alex Tuck got 54 points last year, I believe. Like, I did not see that kind of production coming out of him, especially playing in a third line role.
Yeah. Yeah, and they play, it's just such a fast game, right? Like, and
totally.
it's they, as much as I hate them because of what they did when they came in, they're a fun team to watch and really good. The big question mark for me is, Fleury's not getting any younger, right?
Right.
But he's still, if he still had, I think, 8 shutouts last year. I'd have to check. But unbelievable. And as far as depth goes, on every level of this team, they are just they have a team that is, and they'll have Stone for the full season,
Right.
right? They're a team that, assuming he doesn't get injured, but they are a team that could be knocking on President's Cup door. That's how deep and good they are. And of course, you remember Schmidt didn't start the season last year.
Right.
Just so many things that are in their favor. The only question for me on this team is Fleury, and that's not even really a good question because he's not that old. He's 34, 35, I think maybe, and he's not showing any signs of being anything but the first-rate goaltender that he is.
For sure. And the thing that happened to Fleury when he came to Vegas is all the pressure that was with him in Pittsburgh was gone. And whatever goalie coach was in Vegas kind of gave him free reign. They let him go back to more of a more athletic style, so to speak. Whereas Pittsburgh, they were kind of putting the reins on him a little bit. Whereas in Vegas, they took the leash off and they let him go. And look at the results.
Yeah, he's clearly not staying out every night.
No, for sure. He's not taking advantage of the city.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got, and I'm going by order of finish for the teams last year. We've got now in the Pacific, specifically in the Pacific.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah. Not too bad. I should have eaten some crackers or something first, and would have been fun. We've got the Coyotes for those U.S. folks. The Arizona Coyotes, finished with 86 points last year. Key signing, of course, Phil Kessel. And then, of course, Soderberg and Ness, I think, are in. And but Galchenyuk's out, Panic, and, of course, Archibald. Your thoughts on Arizona, who had a bit of even at 86 points, a bit of a surprise year last year.
Yeah, that's right. Like, remember all the injuries they had last year? Like, Ranta missed most of the season last year, and they came to Edmonton for a game here in February. They had something like 7 AHLers on their roster, and they worked us, right? So they just about made the playoffs with all those injuries that they had. Even when fully healthy, they don't have a lot of star power, right? So if I think about the way that they played last year, the way they're coached, and the fact that they're going to be healthy and that they just got Phil Kessel, these guys are a legitimate contender for that third spot in the Pacific.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this team. They are a legitimate contender. You have to ask yourself which Schmaltz shows up. He's incredibly inconsistent. But if he has a hell of a good year, then their offense is that much better, at least from a goal scoring standpoint of adding in Kessel. I am curious, how Kessel does when he goes there, right? Like, was he maybe propped up a little bit by being on a very talented Penguins team that had some amazing players? Obviously, he's always shown that he can score, but he's not like the picture of fit. And I'm really curious, right? How he does there. I think your thoughts, though, Ranta's out again, questionable for the home opener, I think. So they've got Kemper in net. Goaltending, you think they'll do all right in net?
Goaltending, yeah, it all depends on Ranta's health. Like, they have guys there that just go on hot streaks. Like, Kemper has shown a couple times in his career that he can get hot, but he's not a full-time starter in the NHL right now for a reason, right? So which Kemper are we going to get? Are we going to get the hot one, or are we going to get one that's a little more normal?
Yeah, absolutely. So
For sure.
curious. I personally, I don't see them increasing this year, but maybe staying around the same. They could be one of those stories that surprises you. Okay, next up is the Vancouver Canucks. Is Ferland, Ben, Myers, and Miller, and then not much in the way of going out for the Canucks because they really just Hutton and Granlund on the way out.
And the other big addition for them is Quinn Hughes. Right, he got 5 games for them last year, but I've watched him a couple times. That kid is dynamic. Right, so like he upgrades his skill on that defense by tenfold, and then they add Tyler Myers to that defense too, which the contract itself is an overpay, but that adds some stability to a group that really needed it.
Yeah, I think even the Ben contract is a little bit of an overpay at 2. Maybe I've never been totally sold on him, but
I agree with that.
Yeah, but it's still shores up the defense problem they had. What do you think about the Ferland signing?
Ferland is an effective player for sure. Like he's aggressive, he's annoying to play against, and he's in that high 30s, low 40s point range. He's shown he can do it in 2 consecutive years. So like I'm a little more confident in him now than I was going into last season. But like, I don't mind that play for the Canucks as a cheap top 6 option.
Yeah, no, you absolutely 100%. Yeah, 3.5 average per season. I think it was a good pickup. I was a little bit surprised that they got him, which is great for them. The Canucks, as they did last season, and of course injuries were a problem as well for the Canucks. But they could. It depends on who shows up, and then the other big question mark for me is Markstrom. In goal. And to me, they, the question to me is, did they upgrade the defense enough to make up for Markstrom? And I'm not sold on him as a goalie. I just don't think that, he's the kind of guy that leads you to the promised land. And then the other, their bottom, like outside of their top line of Pettersson and Besser, the rest of their forwards, they're just sort of, on the better end of mediocre to me. And so I'm kind of curious which as a group, I think they're, decent. I just don't think that they're, you wouldn't look at this Canucks team and say those 2 top forward lines are, the 2 best in the league. But Pettersson,
no, definitely not. Yeah. But I do think they're strong. Like Pettersson and Besser are 2 of the best young guys in the game.
Absolutely.
Right. And then you look at a second line that's going to have Bo Horvat, possibly JT Miller, who's like
Miller will be.
He's a great complementary piece. He's not going to lead the league in any scoring categories anytime soon, but good complementary piece. And then you put Ferland in that top 6. I think they've got 2 lines that can score. And yes, I think they made a organizational mistake when they gave Beagle and Roussel those big contracts last summer. Mm-hmm. It's like their bottom 6 is super expensive. But honestly, the Canucks kind of remind me of the Oilers from like 2010 to 11, but they've got a better defense and better goaltending.
How very successful franchise of the Edmonton Oilers.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So that's the Canucks. Moving out to one of your old favorites, the Anaheim Ducks, who finished the season with 80 points last year. Of course, Del Zotto's out. Big in is Eakins behind the bench. Weidman's, or Del Zotto's in, rather. And Delorier. Corey Perry's gone. Everybody's favorite player. Your thoughts on the Canucks this year, or the Ducks this year?
Yeah, my hopes for the Ducks aren't very high this year, and like you got to remember, like I think they lost Perry last year because he was
Yeah.
pretty much invisible for them.
Yeah.
They had a lot of injuries too. Like I believe Raquel missed a little bit of time. Ryan Kessler missed the entire year basically, right? They lost a lot of depth, but they do have some young guys coming. Right, like Sam Steele, I don't know if he's going to make their team or not, but he looked good at the end of last season for them. They've still got Ricard Raquel. They've still got Silverberg. They've still got Getzlaff, even though he's 34 now.
Yeah. Yeah, so my view on the Ducks is, I would maybe even see them regressing a little bit more. The goal scoring was a huge problem for them last year, right? And they've got Comtois and Steele maybe coming in as some young guys that might up the excitement level of that forward group. But they I think Getzlaff led the team with 60 points or in or around there for the season. And then of course you're relying on Gibson and net, and Gibson, injuries are a definite problem there. So they, they'll, I think, when he's not injured and he's playing well, and those young guys, that I talk about, they might have some exciting games, but I would expect a lot of the same, if not, a growing year for them. The only thing that sort of surprises me is they don't seem too committed to a rebuild there. Right? Like it's not much has changed there. Eakins, though, has come in obviously to do what he came in to do with Edmonton, and didn't get the time or success out of it, which was come in and take the young guys under his wing and build a team around him. He had some success in San Diego for the Gulls, I think. That's where he came from.
He also had some success in Toronto with the Marlies before coming to Edmonton.
Yeah. So he's proven at the AHL level that he's, a capable coach. He's yet to prove at the NHL level that he's got what it takes. We'll see. I mean, I just don't see them being a contender in the least.
No, I'm with you there. I don't think they're a contender. Like, they got some good pieces on defense with like Fowler and Lindholm and Manson, but outside of that, they don't have the depth they need to compete.
Yeah. And we'll outside of the Oilers, we'll finish off the Pacific by talking about the LA Kings, who finished an Oilers level 71 points last year.
Yeah, too old, too slow, can't score enough goals. That's an easy analysis.
They do have one key addition, of course, which is McClellan behind the bench this year. So we're dealing in California with some ex-Oilers coaches. In fact, a lot of ex-Oilers coaches got jobs this year, Kruger being one of them. So yeah, I don't think there is much to say about LA. You can expect more of the same. Talk about a team that's not committed to a rebuild. I think with LA, when I look at LA, this is a team that is like year after year, they're hoping somebody rebounds, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like this year, it's Jonathan Quick. Does he rebound to the type of Jonathan Quick that we expected? You remember, what's his name? Brown.
Yeah,
right?
Dustin Brown.
Like he had a great year, then he had a really crap year, and then they all, wanted him to rebound, and every year it just seems like, they're always waiting for somebody to rebound all the time. The team gets older, and no changes are really made. I mean, this team hasn't made. This is the same team, from 4 or 5 years ago, 3-4 years ago. right?
Basically, like this is still the core of their Stanley Cup teams with Kopitar and Brown and Doughty and Quick and Carter, all those guys, right? They added Kovalchuk to that last year, but he's also old.
Yeah. Like their top guys are all in their 30s, right?
Mid-30s, yeah.
Yeah. And their young guy is Tyler Toffoli, and he's 27, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he to me is not that impressive.
Yeah, no, and so I think we can expect more of the same. The only, the big question mark I would have whether they, did anything would be if Quick regained his form.
He's gonna have to be a brick wall, like stand on his head, like win the Vezina in a landslide to have them even have a chance.
Absolutely.
Like with that defense in front of him, with Doughty and Martinez is the only two players that most people are probably only going to be able to name.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, they added Hutton in there, but he's not a big deal.
Yeah, my case in point.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that rounds off the Pacific. We'll just quickly run through the rest in the West, and Chicago. Thoughts on Chicago?
I think they'll be better than last year. They got it. They brought Robin Leonard in as an insurance policy in goal in case Crawford can't figure it out. Their youth has been really good up front. Like Alex DeBrincat got 40 goals last year. Dylan Strome had an excellent second half with them. I mean, with Patrick Kane, they've always got a chance. Taves. They got Sad and Anisimov. Like they've still got some depth. They brought in Andrew Shaw again, and they fortified their defense as well. Like they brought in Calvin DeHaan and Olli Mata. They got Gustafsson, who emerged last year. Right, they still got Keith and Seabrook, who, while they're not in their prime anymore, are still effective NHL defenders.
Yeah, I think Chicago might be the biggest surprise of the season. Especially with having brought in Leonard. Like they've got, in my mind, the best 1-2 goal pair in the league right now.
You could make that argument.
Yeah. And so, DeBrincat, Strome, right, and Taves and Kane. I mean, there's no way I would ever count those guys out, right? Like Kane is just, Kane's Kane. Right? Yeah. And, you've got guys like Keith and Seabrook and Mata on defense, and you're doing all right. This team last year, that was a blip, and they're back in my mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You're one of your old favorites, Colorado.
Colorado is going to be a dangerous team. Like, wow. Last year, they were a bit one-dimensional with that top line with McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog. But this year, they've added Nazem Kadri. They got Andrei Burakovsky. Like they have the makings of a good second line there. You put them with Tyson Jost or JT Compher in their top six.
Yep.
And Cale Makar, I think, is a stud. Like that kid is incredible. Like watching him in the playoffs last year, the way he skates and his creativity with the puck. Like I don't think they're losing much with Barry being shipped out of town there.
Yeah, so here's another team where they've made all the changes they need to make sort of in that forward group, and the one the question mark with them is Grubauer in my mind. Is stay healthy or not? How does he do? Makar, outstanding. Like what a pickup for Colorado. McKinnon is he's made a point and a case to be considered one of the best in the world, right?
Totally.
And while I don't believe it, there were people that were, suggesting he was better than our own Connor McDavid. And
blasphemy.
Yeah. But worthy of the conversation at the very least, right? Like he is outstanding. Yeah.
Oh, McKinnon is such an explosive skater. He can snipe. He's got hands. He's physical. Yeah. He's got the full package.
Takes over a game. Dallas.
I think Dallas is going to be dangerous as well. Like, they've got one of the best lines in the league, in my opinion, with Seguin, Ben, and Radulov. And then they added Pavelski and Corey Perry, even though Perry's not the goal scorer he used to be. I feel like he and Pavelski can make a smart and effective second line. And you got Rupe Hintz as well, who he was impressive to me in the playoffs and towards the end of last season. Like, he really emerged as a guy that can stick in their top six.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love watching Miro Heiskanen skate. Like, that's just poetry in motion. Same with John Klingberg.
So you're a bit of a Dallas fan.
I like their team. I really do. And when Ben Bishop is healthy, he's still one of the best goaltenders in the league.
Oh.
Like 7 shutouts last year as well.
Vezina candidate, right? Like, Bishop is easily one of the best goalies in the league. Talking about, like Leonard and Crawford, Dallas is another one that has good goaltending. And it seems to me that, and we'll get to the Oilers here quickly, but, this is an area that these real top performing teams are strong at, and Bishop is one of them. You can't, this depth wise, Dallas is, in a league of their own. Of course, they picked up Sekera. Corey Perry's broken his foot again, so he could be, not again. I can't recall what his injury was last year that kept him out for most of it, but he, it seems to be injuries are a continued problem for him. And of course, he's mid-30s as well, but not a big contract anyway. It was just a 1 year kind of contract for him, but
that was worth the risk on their part.
And so what's interesting to me is there was an article by Sportsnet that picked Dallas as potentially one of those teams that could miss the playoffs. I'd be curious why. It was not, and I should say, in fairness to whoever wrote it on Sportsnet, they weren't saying Dallas looked bad. It seemed to be the writer had a bit more of a hunch than anything. Let's carry on. Minnesota.
Wow, Minnesota. What a situation they've got going there. They fire Paul Fenton after 1 season, bring in Billy Guerin, who, while has a good track record as an assistant GM in Pittsburgh, has never run the show before. And they got Jason Zucker, who's been almost traded twice, and he's on the team to start the season, so who knows how that situation's like in the room. But they're kind of like the Kings as well. A lot of their core is older, like Eric Stahl, Zach Parise, Mikko Koivu, right? Ryan Suter. Now, they do have a couple of exciting pieces, like Matt Dumba has quietly emerged as one of the better offensive defensemen in the game. Spurgeon is sneaky good as well on their power play.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Dubnyk is still solid.
Yeah, so I think, funny, but when I look at my notes on the Minnesota Wild, and this is word for word, this team reminds me a lot in capitals of what plagues the LA Kings.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah, I 100%. I mean, this is a team not committed to a rebuild. They got Zach Zuccarello.
Another aging guy, part of their core for this year.
Yeah, and again, looking for bounce back years from everybody. Right, like Parise, very similar to Getzlaf at top point producer. He had 62 points. They just need more offense, and either Dubnyk's, we're talking about being a brick wall. He's going to have to be, because this is a team that's going to have to win, the 1-0, 2-1 type games to get anywhere. And I just can't see them, improving on where they were last year at all.
Yeah, like this is a team that needs more offense, and you're right. But they traded away Marcus Granlund.
Yep.
Yeah, they traded away Granlund, they traded away Charlie Coyle, and they traded away Nino Niederreiter last season. Right? So they brought in Fiala and Donato and Victor Rask to replace them.
Yeah, it's not going to be enough. I just can't see them doing very well this year. Next up is Nashville.
Perennial contender. What else can you say about them, right? Interesting moves this year, moving Subban out and bringing Duchesne in. It's kind of a move away from their defense first structure that they've always had. And now they've finally got a decent number one center. Him and they're good up front. Him and Johansson, Mikael Granlund. Now I'm getting the name right there.
Yeah,
Forsberg. Right? It's like, and Roman Josi on the back end, Pekka Rinne in goal. Like they're a contender.
Yeah, they they've got a lot of depth now in the forward space. Bringing in Duchesne. I don't think that they lost a lot by taking out Subban, to be honest. While I like Subban as a defenseman, they've still got good D depth, and Pekka Rinne, I wouldn't bet against him at all. This should be they should be in there. I'm not sure that they're as good a team as they were in the past. I don't think they're going to be top of the Western Conference, but they're certainly going to be there, right?
Yeah, they're definitely in the conversation.
Yeah. St. Louis.
Yeah, defending Cup champs, right? Hard to bet against them, but you like their top line, like O'Reilly and Tarasenko, Shen, Schwartz, however you want to arrange the top couple of lines. Like they've got skill, they've got depth, they're physical. They had Justin Falk on the back end. That's even more skill and more mobility. And then my question mark with St. Louis is Binnington.
Yep.
Right? He was exceptional for them in the playoffs, but that's a rookie goaltender that got hot and stayed hot. But he did it for half a season.
Yeah. Yeah, so, obviously Stanley Cup hangover, right? Is that going to affect them? It is a thing, absolutely. They, you don't get a lot of time off. But this team, right, everybody made so much of where they were, mid-season to where they finished off. They were the team that finished the season. They weren't the team that started the season. Like, nobody expected them to do as poorly as they were doing at the beginning of the season. To me, that's the real story. This is a good team. It was a good team last year. It was the team they had last year. Nobody should be surprised that they made it to the Stanley Cup at all. I think they had a good team then. They got a good team now. Binnington's the biggest question. And the only other question for me is, how do they react after winning it all last season? Other than that, there's not much you can say about this team. They're going to be a contender on any night they feel good. Right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like you say, they're skilled, they're fast, they're physical. They've got defensemen that can move the puck, like Pietrangelo, Parayko, Falk, Bouwmeester. And then if Binnington is good, they'll be one of the elite teams.
If they hadn't come back the way that they did at the second half of the season, Parayko would be gone, right?
That's entirely possible.
Can you imagine the changes they would have made at the deadline? And how, we would just never know. We would never know just how good this team is.
Yeah, they would have started a rebuild probably. They were talking about maybe even moving Shen, possibly Tarasenko even.
Unreal. How many times did you see the Oilers in on Parayko rumors, right?
All the time. Nurse for Parayko.
Yeah. And, man, that would have been a steal for us. I like Nurse, but Parayko's outstanding. Last but not least, and to me the biggest question mark around any team, the Winnipeg Jets.
I'm scared for Winnipeg. The reason I'm scared for Winnipeg is they've lost, with Bufflin contemplating his life right now. They've lost Bufflin, they've lost Trouba, and they lost Myers. That's their entire right side.
Yeah, and Sherratt, right? And
Sherratt.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't mind Neil Pionk. Like, I think he's a bottom level second pairing guy. I think he's got some creativity. He's got some decent offense. Sami Niku has been waiting in the wings for a couple seasons now. I think he's ready to step in and take a full-time role. Josh Morrissey is the only defender in the league that I think does an effective job against Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
When I watch Morrissey play against him, I think he's one of the few that can skate backwards well enough to contain McDavid on most nights.
Yeah, I think so defense, I mean, everything. And you're right about Morrissey. I mean, he's effective. Is he enough? Pionk enough? I mean, no. I mean, and then Hellebuck, right? Like, is inconsistent at best.
And he looked bad in the preseason game. We went to Winnipeg and played him. Like, the commentators were commenting on it, but yeah, he did not look good.
Yeah, he needs a bounce back season if he's he's going to do anything, and they certainly they're not going to get anything out of Brossoit as a backup. I don't think he's anywhere near ready. He's not going to do the Binnington and come in and save the day. So defensively, they're in big trouble. The other thing to me is this. I know Laine bet on himself with a 2-year contract. I would have told you, because I've been to Winnipeg Jets games, and I hear that shot by Laine hit when he misses the net and it hits the glass. It's like a shotgun. Like, that guy, he's got a world caliber, shot. But he's, as he showed last year, he goes through hot streaks and down streaks, and what's maybe the most telling thing for me was when the Athletic did their player poll. He was rated the most overrated player in the league by the players.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so to me, that tells me that all of the little knocks that you hear about Laine, that the guys in the know say, that's quite possibly true. And so Mike, I've got a big question mark around Laine, whether or not he's is he for real? We don't know. Everybody says, well, he did 30 goals last year. Well, he did them all in 1 month, right? Well, not all
That's
of them,
very true.
but he did most of them all in 1 month. And I think, in fact, that he, as soon as Bufflin was gone, that's when he struggled. And so Bufflin's, I'm not sure, what the latest word is, but my gut tells me he's out. And so I think Laine is going to really struggle this year. They've got that top line of Wheeler, Scheifele, and Ehlers is going to be good, but they're I don't know that that's enough, right?
No, they've got the top line, and you think about Laine, and I'm worried about his attitude now because he's whining about not playing on the top line enough. Well, guess what? It's not given to you, right? Like, he's not good defensively. He's not an amazing skater. Like, he is getting by on that shot, and it's an elite shot. It is. But you're right. He's got a bunch of knocks in his game that are stopping him from being on that top line on a night-to-night basis.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So, they're maybe the biggest question mark for me. All right. We are over an hour in, and, I never get to everything I want to get to. Let's finish off. I mean, we didn't even talk a lot of Oilers, to be fair. We talked a little bit about Holland and Tippett. Let's do some predictions. And I think the biggest thing when you're doing a season preview is where do you see the Oilers at this year, and then are they going to make the playoffs? It's always going to be the big question mark. So best way to do this, let's say we go by. We're just going to do Western Conference. and then maybe your pick for who's going to President's Club and favorite to win the cup. So if we start, who do you think is going to finish off first in the West this year?
First in the West, I've got to go with the Predators. They're just consistently solid every year. I like the offensive dynamic they're leaning towards this year, and their defense is still strong with Yossi, Ekholm, and Ellis, and Pecorine mixed with UC Saros. I think is a very good tandem. But I think they're the best in the West.
Okay. If I am okay, let me just take some notes here first. Okay. Oh, it's got. You have got, and I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna take these, and then I'm gonna have you on again because I've enjoyed having you on.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So you've got Nashville, and if I had to pick a best in the West this year, I'm gonna go with Chicago.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go a little bit off the charts. In fact, I'm not sure I've seen anybody say Chicago. Now, if you go second.
Second in the West, I have to say Vegas.
Yeah. Okay. Vegas in second. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna say Vegas in second. So we're in agreement, at least on one.
Yep.
Third in the West.
I'm gonna go Colorado there.
Colorado. All right. I think I will likely go. That's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with St. Louis. Okay. Fourth.
I think that's where I'll go, St. Louis.
Okay. St. Louis. Okay. And me, I'm going to go Nashville. So I've definitely got them down quite a ways further than you. Fifth.
I'll take the Sharks there.
Sharks. Okay. All right. So you're changing it up on me. I was going to put Sharks, and I've had the city names the whole way. I put San Jose. Thankfully.
Oh. Sorry to confuse you.
Yeah, throwing me off here big time. Let's be consistent. All right. So you got San Jose, and I have got for fifth. And I'm doing this on the fly, by the way. I haven't done this yet. I'm gonna have to go with Colorado in fifth. Okay, sixth.
Sixth. Now, I guess it kind of depends on how we're doing this, because
let's go by playoff. Playoff implications. So,
yeah, it's like if we're ranking division winners, I'm going third place in the Pacific here. I'm giving that to the Coyotes.
Okay, so the Coyotes. Really? Okay. So, and I've got Vegas. I guess I've already screwed mine up, haven't I? All right. So I would probably have to drop Colorado out because I've got. Oh, geez, I really screwed mine up, didn't I?
Did you take all Central teams?
I did take all Central teams, which is not a big surprise because the Central is.
It's so much stronger than the Pacific.
So I've got Vegas. I'm gonna have to go. So I'm gonna have to go Chicago, Vegas, St. Louis, San Jose, and then I hate it. I hate to say this, Calgary. Okay. So that, and then I've got. So now I've got Chicago in first, Vegas in second, St. Louis in third, San Jose, Calgary. Then I've got Nashville and Colorado. That's my top seven. You're on seventh place now.
Seventh place, so I'm going to go Dallas.
Dallas. Okay. And then, so here is the final wild card spot. I'm going to give that to you right now first to start out.
Sorry to disappoint you, Oil fans, but this one is going to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Chicago Blackhawks. All right. So Chicago. So, okay, and because I've got them in first, they're not even there for me. But I've got a lot of good teams that I haven't even picked yet. So if I'm to pick the last and final wild card spot, Vegas, St. Louis, Nashville, Minnesota. I haven't even picked Dallas yet, and I feel like that's a bad move. They're better than that, but given the strength of the Central, I'm going to take them in the final wild card spot. So, folks, as we shut down the season preview for the Edmonton Oilers, the unfortunate is between Ryan and I. Neither of us have the Oilers making the playoffs this year. Where do you see them? Do you see them fighting for that final wild card spot, or do you think they're a little ways out again?
I think they'll be playing meaningful games at the end of March into April. I have them at 10th spot in the West. I think they'll be fighting it out with Vancouver and Chicago for that final wildcard spot.
All right. Okay, so you're not giving Chicago near as much credit as I am. I honestly, I feel like that's one of the teams to beat this year. All right. Well, it's very interesting. I mean, so we've got a very different look. I'm going to save these, and we'll come back to them mid-season and kind of see where they are. I think so. If we're talking, I guess I should maybe say my thoughts on the Oilers this year, and also maybe we can talk about this, because if I'm to take a team that might surprise everybody, my team actually is the Oilers this year. And I'm going to say that because I don't think you can ever count out two top players like Draisaitl and McDavid. I think that, if there's a way that those two can produce on two separate lines, you could have two of the top lines in the league. It's possible, right?
Totally.
And then. We don't know how the inclusion of Mike Smith does, and also, maybe right, like if defensively, if the Tippett system works, maybe defensively we can stop leaking goals, and who knows if Koskinen in his second season will do what Chiarelli thought he would do in his first season. I think there's a lot of question marks around the Oilers this season, as there are every season. I think that they've done some of the right things to change that. I'm very excited to see how that works. I've got a lot of belief that they can do it with this squad. But if I was to put Vegas odds on it, I would say they're out of a playoff spot right now. Your surprise team, if there is one, for the West?
Honestly, it's hard to argue with your point on the Oilers being that potential surprise team, because nobody's expecting them to do much of anything, but there is a scenario where they could, right? I look at our deficiencies from last year. We only had one line that could score. This year, we have a good chance at having two, as long as Neil rebounds, right? Whether you put those four guys in any pairing you want, whether it's McDavid and Neil or McDavid and Draisaitl and then Neil and Nuge, any combination of those four, I think, should yield two scoring lines. And the bottom six has to be existent, right? Last year, their scoring was gone. It was invisible. Any guy that Holland brought in this year has the capability of scoring at least 10 goals, possibly. Doesn't mean they will all score 10 goals. It means they can all do it. So with some improved scoring in the bottom six and two scoring lines that can be a threat on any given night, the Oilers are in better shape than they were last year. And the other thing that looks to be much improved is offense from the blue line. I look at a guy like Ethan Bear as a huge X factor for this team, just because he's that right-handed puck-moving defenseman that we've wanted to have in our top four for so many years, and here we are. The only question is, since he's a rookie, can he do it for the full season?
Yeah, and let's not forget that we might still see guys like Bouchard come up midway through the season if he's killing it in the AHL, right?
For sure.
There's some guys that we can bring in from the Oilers level that could really change the outlook of this organization. I think there's a lot of question marks, right? Sadly, there are every year for this squad. I'm feeling, it is the presence of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl make me hopeful every year. I think we've upgraded at least our backup goaltending for the time being, and so that part I'm a little bit excited about, and who knows what we'll get from Koskinen. He still looked weak up high. In the preseason. So I hope that that ends. It's so weird for such a big guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've never seen a guy as big as him get beat so easily and so cleanly on wrist shots.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And you know what I'm curious about, when I think that he and Smith will split time pretty equal. I'm really curious how Smith's puck playing game does for the Oilers. I think it confused the Flames on a lot of given nights. And it could do the same for the Oilers. But then again, it could be what we're missing, because we've not had somebody who's got that, ability to get the puck up the ice, which and get guys going with speed that makes them successful. So
for a defense that has always struggled with moving the puck, having a goaltender back there that can get the puck moving north quickly is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really curious about that. All right. Well, I want to thank you again. I've got, for those of you that have listened to the end, I had Ryan on from EdmontonOilDrops.ca. You can find him on Twitter at EDMOilDrops. I guess just at EDMOilDrops.
You got it.
Yeah. And I'll get it straight eventually. Thanks so much for joining me. I had a great time and a great chat, and clearly you're paying attention to the league, and so for those of you that are listening, please check out his blog and interact with him on Twitter. Have some fun. It's great to have guys like you out there that are giving us a little bit more content, and really, I've enjoyed reading what you've put out there. So keep that up.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the kind words, and thanks very much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's a wrap.